Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jakejames Lugo. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to a brand new episode of JJ's One Man Podcast. You're going to notice some things a little bit different about this one than typically when I do these one man podcast episodes, because this one is going to be a little special for me, a little bit different, because this time we're going to talk about Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. In my opinion, one of the best, if not the best, fighting game ever created. And not just because of the typical stuff you hear a lot of people say with it laying the foundation for the fighting game community and the competitive fighting game scene and all this other stuff. There's a number of different things and reasons why I think this is probably one of the best fighting games ever created. But this is going to be a little bit different because you're probably going to be seeing footage of the game itself. This is actually me playing in a couple different places, but mostly on PlayStation Network, PSN, because of the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection. It's just the easiest version to get a hold of and the easiest one to kind of just hop online and start playing matches without having to go through a whole bunch of hoopla with like Fightcade and stuff. But understand, like, everything that I talk about now is going to apply to not just that version, but all the different arcade and just various different ports of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So that includes the arcade cabinet itself, Fightcade, all the various like console ports and stuff. We're just going to talk about the game in general because I figured this would be kind of fun. It'd be a little bit different. And again, as you're seeing the game, you get to see me play online against different people, as well as also just to listen to my thoughts overall, my Spitfire, honest, true, straight up thoughts about this game. So to be honest with you guys, the first time I really got exposed to Super Turbo in general, which I'm going to be referring to it as Super Turbo just for shorthand, which is this game. A lot of people just say like ST like that, but Super Turbo I feel like is a little bit much more clear exactly what game or what version of Street Fighter 2 you're talking about, rather than just saying the whole name like that. But the first time I really got exposed to Super Turbo competitively when it came to, not just seeing it as just a random game in the arcade, but actually seeing people get competitive and like really dive into this game was actually at EVO, believe it or not. Funny enough, right? I went to my first EVO, which is EVO East, way back when, in 2007. I actually didn't go to play Street Fighter. I went with a couple friends that were going to be playing in Smash Brothers Melee, and that was just, something I thought like it would be kind of fun. I love fighting games. I love the genre. I was not prepared with the way that, people got super competitive with it, especially with Smash. I got totally like demolished. But while I was there, checking all that stuff out and hanging out with people and meeting new people, I got to see firsthand, competitive Street Fighter. I got to see people really kind of, showcasing their skills, playing sets like first to fives, first to tens, and really seeing that for the first time and interacting with it for the first time at EVO East. And when I saw the finals for Super Turbo there, again, I forgot exactly who won, but I know there was like a number of like big players there. I think I saw Justin Wong at one point hanging around there. I know that he was teaching my friend how to play Third Strike, just random stuff, just, while wasting time in pools or just playing casuals and stuff. But getting to see those players play on the main stage during the finals that weekend was like, wow, this game is like really wild. Like this game is like pretty insane and everybody gets super hyped for it. That was the first time I really got to see that type of environment with this game. But what about the game itself? What is it about the game that I like so much or it really resonates with me and why I keep going back to it? Why I keep playing it online, why I keep messing around with it, as opposed to playing more modern Capcom releases or other fighting games a little bit more often. Because obviously we have Street Fighter V, we've had Ultra Street Fighter 4 for like the longest time, or just Street Fighter 4, and all the other various different Capcom fighting games we've had over the years. For me, just Super Turbo is so simple to kind of just dive into and understand it, but it's very difficult and very, intricate to master. There's like a lot of depth to this game. Granted, this is like has to be like the fourth or fifth iteration of Street Fighter 2 because there's Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition, Hyper Fighting, Super, and then so it's like about the fifth. So the Super Turbo's after Super New Challengers, but there's a whole bunch of versions with it. Okay, it's basically Street Fighter 2 with all these other like extra changes and layers on top of it. But the one thing that all those versions really have in common is that, besides being the same game, is that it's just so simple to understand. It's like the most basic like foundation of what a fighting game, especially a fast-paced competitive fighting game can be, where it's just two people, you got your assortment of moves and just go at it, and whoever is the last one standing is the victor. And that's fun. And on top of that, because it's an older 16-bit game, it could really happen really quickly. Like you could just get into rematches and stuff like super quickly. Granted, you needed quarters back in the day with the arcade machine, but still, even now with the versions that we have on the various platforms, we could just immediately just dive into it. And it's super fast. Again, compared to like all these other fighting games out now that take almost forever and a day just to kind of get back into a rematch. But I love that about Super Turbo. I think that there's an elegance to the gameplay. There's an elegance to the momentum shifts between two people, especially two good players. I've never been competitive as far as like going into tournaments and trying to make top 16 or top 32 with this game, but I highly respect a lot of the people that put in the time to really get good at it and know a lot of the combos, know a lot of the different tricks of the trade against certain characters, knowing the different matchups and the mind games. It's almost like a game of chess. I've heard Super Turbo or just Street Fighter competitive play be compared to like a chess match, because when you have like two really good players that know matchups and know their moves and know how to actually do certain combos and have the timing right, it all becomes a game of like, okay, who's going to mess up first? What can I capitalize on here and there in order to come out the victor and continue on this set in order to win? Like that, there's just something that's just magical about that, especially when you see it in action. Because when I was at Evo East back then in '07, watching these players play and then having the whole crowd like go crazy and stuff, it just was like, wow, like on top of all the pressure of having to deal with the other person playing it, right? You have to deal with all this other noise and stuff that's all over the place. So it takes a lot of concentration and a lot of, a lot of skill in order to keep your composure and playing this game at a really high competitive level. Now, so for me personally, again, getting back more specifically to the game elements itself, I love the characters. I think that, again, the characters are iconic. The characters, for me, some of my favorites. I'm a big DJ main. I play DJ a lot. As many people have seen me play, I play it almost all the time. Even though I play most of the roster, if not the entire roster, I would say like my top three that are my usual go-tos are DJ, probably Ken or Ryu, because I kind of like interchange between them, and maybe here and there, because it's a little bit different, especially now these days, either Blanca or Vega. And it's just weird because like I always see myself like jumping between the roster. If I have to like pick a couple that are probably my least used, I would probably say Sagat. I don't hardly use Sagat as much as maybe I probably should, because a lot of people love using old Sagat. Or I would also have to say maybe Fei Long and I would also have to say T-Hawk, because even though I play grapplers like with Zangief and stuff, like you would expect me to actually dive into T-Hawk as well, but not really a lot of T-Hawk. T-Hawk, it takes a lot of skill to master, especially with his distance and a lot of things you got to do in order to hit that SPD. Because once you learn that and once you get like really good with it, you could be really devastating, as some players out there that have been competitive have shown people. But those are usually my top three, which would be DJ, Ryu/Ken, as well as also Vega. Okay, those are the ones I would really kind of go back and forth with. And I just find them like, again, even though it took me a while, especially younger, to learn how to do the special moves. This is why, like, when I was a kid, I was more of a Mortal Kombat fan, because I couldn't do the quarter circle motions or really didn't understand the charge motions for Street Fighter. But I did understand Mortal Kombat, where it was just down forward and hit a button, or back forward to hit a button, and different stuff like that I felt was a little bit more simpler. But as I got older and I realized, okay, it's just like moving the joystick or pressing like the actual D-pad in a certain motion like that, things became a little bit much more open, and I understood what was going on with it. And like I said, it became magical. It was like really, really interesting to feel that for the first time and actually dive into this game. And then over the years, get really good with it. The other thing that I find very interesting, and I talk about this all the time with Super Turbo, is that this is a game that once you get really good with it and once you learn how to play it, you could transfer a lot of the skills and a lot of the philosophies and approaches to almost any fighting game. I did a whole panel at Long Island Retro Uplink where I was talking about fighting game skills and how to get better at fighting games in general. And I said that, listen, if you really want to get good at all fighting games, or at least become competent at most fighting games out there, learn how to play Super Turbo. I mean, you could say the same thing about most other games out there, but I feel like Super Turbo takes like all the basic fundamental elements of fighting games, even if you're not playing competitive, but just like understanding how to play those games, and really just puts it in front of you and puts it into practice frequently. And it's like, it gets really simple. Well, I shouldn't say simple, but it gets really interesting to see like someone play that game for the first time and then go play another fighting game that they probably touched for the first time and see how decent they could actually be with it. And like, picking up certain things and trying out certain stuff. I found myself doing the same thing, especially when I first got into Guilty Gear, when I first got into BlazBlue, when I first got into other 2D fighting games. But I still feel like those same things could also be even applied to 3D fighting games. The ideas of spacing, the idea of like controlling space and having like your pokes, your footsies and stuff. All that really is established in Super Turbo, but could be transferred either to 2D or other 3D fighting games. And it just is awesome. It actually is really cool. This is why also when I feel like I want to play another fighting game, but like I want to try something like, just kind of like get my mind going, kind of work it out a little bit as a warm-up, I would play like a couple matches of Super Turbo before I go play like Tekken 7 or before I go play Soul Calibur 6 or anything of the nature. It just is something that I feel like more people should try it out and explore, because it actually does feel like it works. It actually does feel like it actually, helps me become a better, more competent gamer or more competent player within the fighting genre, just overall. And again, this is taking like years. It's not something you're going to just play this game once and then like experience it overnight like that. Like you're not going to turn into like Daigo or Justin Wong or any of these other players like overnight. I always have to say that because some people are like throw it out there, but it is something that the more that you do it, it's like working out a muscle. The more that you do it, the easier and the more interesting it's going to get for you. Now, a couple other final thoughts about Super Turbo, I guess you could say, because we have to talk about the ports as far as, well, they're not necessarily ports, but like the new additions and iterations of Street Fighter 2 or Super Turbo, because there's been multiple out there. There's HD Remix, there's Ultra Street Fighter 2, the Final Challengers. It's just as weird with this history of this game, because this is probably Capcom's one of their most respected and one of their most like biggest games they've ever released. Plain and simple. Street Fighter 2 is like a legendary game that did a lot of stuff for gaming history, both in the arcades and also for home consoles. But for whatever reason, Capcom doesn't take like, this specific game itself, even though they've done the Anniversary Collection, but take this game specifically and have a real reverence for it, because they've had multiple versions of this game re-released across many platforms, including the PS2 with the Anniversary Collection. Like I mentioned, HD Remix, Ultra Street Fighter 2, the Anniversary Collection we got now on PlayStation Network and PS4 and Xbox One. Like they have stuff like that, but there's no like one definitive version that people play of this game that has like everything, both with its history and other extra stuff included for Super Turbo. You could argue the first Anniversary Collection that came with Third Strike is like that because it comes with the Street Fighter 2 movie, and I think that's a very strong argument for that. But to me, the most definitive version or definitive edition that Capcom could possibly maybe down the line release for Super Turbo to kind of like really celebrate its legacy is to have the game itself. Okay, maybe have multiple like iterations or like of this game, like either HD Remix or Ultra Street Fighter 2 Turbo, that specific one because that's the most recent one. But then have like what they did with the Anniversary Collection, where it has all the extra content, concept art, maybe some interviews with some of the key players that helped develop the game, or some of the key tournament players that helped make that scene, and make it like a real celebration of this game. Again, I understand that some people say we already got that with the Anniversary Collection, but that's Street Fighter as a series. To me, it's not just Super Turbo. I feel like there's some of the games in that collection, like including Alpha, and you could even argue the Third Strike games, some people just don't give a damn about. Especially, it's funny enough because Third Strike is one that has the best like 2D animation and 2D sprite work, in my personal opinion, for the entire Street Fighter series. Like hands down. I don't even think there's an argument there with that. But that collection is more about the franchise of Street Fighter as a whole. This is why they had so many games. This is why I had all this stuff with the timeline and everything else. But really, if it's just Super Turbo we're talking about here, I want to see something like that done that has multiple versions. And also, this is one other thing. I just thought of this right now, right? The music of this game. The music of this game is legendary. Okay, it was done by Yoko Shimomura, or did most of the themes with it, and all the different like remixes that we've had in multiple versions of Super Turbo and multiple ports of Super Turbo. For whatever reason, Capcom hasn't put all that together, because there's some amazing remixes for some of these iconic character themes, especially Ryu, especially Chun-Li, Fei Long, oh my god, Zangief, like the Hyper Edition version of Street Fighter 2 Turbo that they have in that Anniversary Collection on the PS2 has some amazing music that just does not get re-released for whatever reason. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go listen to it on YouTube sometime and compare it to some of the other like original arcade versions or some of the remixes we have now in some other games. I'll tell you right now, these are like really freaking good. Like they have that both that late 80s, early 90s flair to it with like synths and stuff. It just has like a charm to it that just sounds so freaking good. Okay, I just thought about that now, which is hilarious. But anyway, to kind of wrap things up, like I said, I think that Super Turbo is probably one of the best fighting games ever released, ever created. Not just because of the foundation that it made for the fighting game scene or the fighting game genre, but just because it's a game that's endured for so long. It's a game that I feel like you could always go back to and really dive into and really take a lot out of and still become relevant, or at least pull a bunch of things that are relevant even now, regardless of what type of fighting game that you play, or regardless of what type of skill level you are within fighting games or the fighting game genre. But anyway, those are just my honest, straight up, real thoughts about Super Turbo. Like I said, this is a little bit different. It's just something that I thought was special. And I just wanted to just sit down and just talk about this game. I'm pretty sure that if I had another person like on a podcast, something, I could probably talk about this game for hours, talking about matchups, talking about strategies, talking about like my impact in my life with this game. The funny thing is too, the first time I got exposed to Street Fighter 2, not even Super Turbo, but Street Fighter 2, which I believe was either Hyper Fighting or the original Street Fighter 2, was in arcade cabinets and pizzerias in New York. That was a thing for me. And maybe a couple of you out there listening to this now could relate to it, but that was like a thing for me living in New York, who lived right next to a couple pizzerias on my block. Like, it was really funny. But anyway, before I go on any longer and I continue rambling, those are my thoughts and those are my honest, real thoughts about Super Turbo. Let me know what you think about this game or anything Street Fighter related down below in the comments section. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I have a bunch of different reviews and other videos that are fighting game and non-fighting game related stuff here on the channel. Let me know if you guys enjoy that type of stuff, and also what type of games you guys want to see me highlight on the channel, whether they're fighting games or not. Again, this is open to anybody out there, but anyway, thank you for listening to me talk about this stuff and just kind of fanboying and just going ham on this stuff. And I will talk to all of you again very soon.